The girl asked her boyfriend what they were going to eat. After that, she suggested Hogo. The guy replied that he didn't care. Fang Laifu was an immoral, honest, and pure-blooded representative of the rich second generation. Sitting next to him is Xiao. These guys fit together and are very happy. But just one phone call from the boy's father shattered their entire idyll. After Dongfan picked up the phone, he was told that his father and mother were going to go on a trip to enjoy life. Their son is all grown up now, so needs to learn how to take care of himself. But his parents will keep an eye on him. As soon as the guy wanted to retrace his steps for traveling the world, just as suddenly, his father hung up the phone. So Fang Laifu changed his route because he needed to find out everything urgently. The guards wouldn't let the gentleman inside. Fang Laifu shouted to let him in. After all, this was his home and he wanted to see his parents. He was then shown an asset freezing order. A man told you the protagonist that his parents aren't here. All their assets have been frozen by the bank. Of course, including this mansion and the guy's sports cars. Xiao was immediately worried from her boyfriend. She tried to reassure him by talking about contacting her father. It was good to have such a wonderful girl by his side. It was logical to assume that his parents were in trouble, since he had not heard from them at all. Dongfang. He couldn't even get through to his parents. Xiao tried to reassure Greenhouse by saying that maybe their phone just ran out of battery. It was so good to have her by his side and constantly reassure him. Afterward, the girl led her boyfriend around and told him that she had a surprise for him. She approached her family. The man told Laif that he will be in their family in the future, so they will take care of him. There is no need to worry. It turns out that his father's company was bought by S family, Xiao. But because of the good relationship, he was given the role of an assistant. He asked his son-in-law to put aside all his grudges, because his dad had given him such a good gift. Xiao said that her father was the most decent, so he let him stay in the family. Her daddy had said that when they got back, all the family business would be given to Life. Right now, it's about doing a good job. Lately, she's been reading a lot of love novels where the main character is constantly enduring abuse. The girl's relatives use their power to do everything in their own way. But in the end, everything ends well. And it happens in life too. Xiao wanted to show the world that there was true love. She suggested that we hold hands and overcome all difficulties together. Maybe Xiao really does love him genuinely, but her father definitely doesn't. He can't even imagine such a picture. The path to success and the fairy tale he had invented for himself now should be forgotten. Parents are missing about all the property being sealed. On top of that, the family had gone into action. Xiao. He didn't understand what was going on at all. But fortunately, he still has trump cards to play. He ran to the house and tried to catch his breath. As luck would have it, it was only recently that his unreliable grandfather signed the house over to Life. Then Dad set him a little goal. If the annual rental rate reached 90%, the right to dispose of the finances would pass to Life. Today is just past June 28th, and the goal is almost reached. He persevered and rented out the property. And now he's going to have a good life. But all his hopes were dashed as soon as he stepped inside the building. It was as if a hurricane had blown through the place. A man crept up behind him. As soon as approached Life was Gao, he immediately freaked out. But then he turned back around and immediately recognized the man who greeted him. It was Old Chen. Laifu was angry, for he thought that this man even wanted to kill him. Old Chen is a bank manager who is responsible for overseeing the fulfillment of a small goal that was set by his father. He said that news of the young gentleman's father's bankruptcy had already spread, and the tenants were afraid they would be hurt by it, so they moved out. Only things left. Laifu didn't understand what kind of bullying this was at all. Old Chen sympathized with his situation, but he also reminded him that Mr. Still owned all the ownership of the building Laifu, so he can continue to work hard to reach his goal next quarter. Lastly, he said he had faith in the young master. Then he left. Laifu remembered that the certificate of title was in the safe. He had already searched everything, but there was no certificate. The protagonist had no idea at all how he would get out of this mess and how to achieve her small goal. He swung around to throw his phone away, incomprehension as to how this situation could have even happened to him. He had known parents all his life, but this situation made him think about how these people could even call themselves parents. His phone hit a wall that had some writing on it. These writings began to sparkle. He shielded himself from that bright glow. It was as if some other building had appeared above the house. Others didn't realize what it had just been. Some thought it was a mirage. He opened his eyes and saw the very sign where his phone had gone. Laifu read that it was the mansion Taixu. For some reason, all the things around him and he himself took off. This situation was getting weirder and weirder. The main character thought he was even dead. The stairs that had been in front of his eyes began to disappear. After that, it was like he was transported to a completely different place. The protagonist wondered why there was a room of zeros. The kid decided to check out this room. There was some kind of fruit hovering over the plate. It was as if couldn't think straight. This fruit looked so beautiful, plus the light was also comfortable. Laifu, so he ate it. Still, what he had just eaten was very smooth. A system window appeared in front of him and informed him that the owner identification had been completed. It congratulated the user on being the new homeowner and cultivator, and the protagonist wondered if this was his path to success. He got the mansion Taixu, and he also became a cultivator. Suddenly, he heard some noise from the room. There was an unknown creature in front of him, and the creature immediately pounced on Laifu. The main character was of course scared and even thought it was a demon. He didn't want to be a cultivator anymore, and asked if there was any way to undo it. The creature spoke to the guy, asking where the mansion was Taixu. Laifu didn't reply anything. Of course, this was the first time it had happened to him, so he didn't even know how to react to it. At the same time, the creature didn't understand why this guy on the ground was sitting on the ground. His body Laifu was trembling. The main character only uttered the words demon. At first he didn't understand what it was about, but afterward he looked at his paw. He came to rent a room, but he didn't expect the spiritual energy here to be so rich. So he accidentally overdid it and returned to his original form. He was only left to imagine what form it had been before, if he was now in his original form. But suddenly he remembered the words of this visitor. He said he came here to get a room. Since his mansion had become like this, the demon's appearance was also logical. In any case, making money is the most important thing for survival. In this end-time era where spiritual energy is scarce, suddenly there was a place with such rich spiritual energy. It seems that this time, his journey ended successfully. Laifu said that the mansion has no maintenance staff and she is the landlord herself. The dog immediately asked if there were any rooms available. The guy mentioned that he was naked, so he wasn't sure if the creature could make the payment. He cried. Luckily, the protagonist found umbrellas, suggested her brother talk things over. Just wish he would just stop crying. They came to the room with zeros, after which Life was offered tea. As it turns out, this demon horde wolf is called Hashichi, and at this moment, he had taken on a human form. Laifu noticed that his visitor was a kin of a husky, after which he introduced himself. He immediately knocked the cup over. Most of all, he hated it when people made up names for him, as if for a dog. Of course, he didn't know such a breed as a husky. Hashichi immediately recalled his name. His name is like this and no other. At the same time, Laifu placed her hand on his head. After that, he calmed down. The kid asked his brother to relax, and not to cause trouble. Hashichi inherited his ancestors' cold-bloodedness, unyielding, courageous, strong, and he was good at teamwork. He practiced in the mountains for 200 years, and finally turned into a human. Before coming to the human world, the clan warned that the world is fickle. It is full of danger and humans are cruel creatures. The alliance of 10,000 races has decreed that demons are forbidden to use magic in front of ordinary humans. So before going into the human world, he had to learn to behave more humbly. His kinsman asked him to wear at least pants and not to walk around naked, but he didn't expect that humility in the human world was more difficult than cultivation. He was constantly at work, and the income was meager. He didn't understand human relationships. His work colleague said goodbye to the laborer. Hashichi started shouting that he was a wolf. He complained that the human world was very complicated and not worth Togo. Meanwhile, Laifu was using doggy stroking, 18th style. The kid wondered what he was going to do. He hadn't thought about it yet. It had only been 10 years since he had lived in the human world, but his strength hadn't increased or even decreased. Therefore, he felt ashamed to go back. As he passed by, he found that there was a rich spiritual energy here that was very suitable for cultivation. Hashichi asked if the rent here was expensive. He really wanted to have fun here. The guy didn't even know what price he should name. Suddenly, the windows of the system appeared in front of his eyes. It said that the landlord of the mansion was Fang Laifu. He has 1 floor and 6 rooms, but there were no tenants. There were features for the residents, namely the practice speed of the mansion is increased by 1. Every day you can get a purifying spiritual raft. If you meet the conditions, you can enter the mansion Taixu. One can bring back the mansion's past at will for 1 minute, and also the features for the landlord. He can manage the mansion, rent out the room, and get the power of spiritual fruit. But he won't get the power of corpses. Every day the landlord's spiritual power increases by 1%. Ha Shiqi's video reaction can be understood that he is the only one who sees this system window. Laifu told him that if he wanted to settle in, he had to follow some rules. Ha Shiqi didn't mind. If he could live in such a place, he would smile even in his sleep. Now it was worth thinking about for rent. He saw that this child is not so simple, even though he is over 200 years old. But he doesn't know how to communicate with people at all. If they became friends, he would pay 5,000 every month. This news made Even's teacup fall down. Ha Shiqi. He hadn't expected that price at all. Laifu thought that it was expensive. But one should not forget that spiritual power could be increased here. Ha Shiqi hooks his leg, indicating that he agrees. From now on, Laifu is his brother, and he will no longer say anything against it. All the money that Shiqi earns will belong to Laifu. The rental agreement for a room and mansion appeared on the table. Taixu. Laifu held out the contract to him. He noticed that the cultivation speed had been increased by as much as 1 time. In addition, 1 purifying spiritual fruit was released every day. These responsibilities are very reasonable, so he is totally agreeable. Laifu offered to sign this contract and they will be one family from now on. He will also show his number. Room 101 will be assigned to him. Ha Shiqi immediately noticed the spiritual fruit in his room. Laifu inquired about the purpose of this spiritual fetus. Shutse revealed that spiritual flesh in small amounts could improve a cultivator's innate qualities. It could be consumed without restriction, though the effect would be less and less each time. He decided to test his hunch in room 102. Even if no one lived in the room, a spiritual fruit would appear there every day, and the protagonist gathered spiritual fruits from several rooms and offered to eat together. An's face tears even appeared as he realized that was Ha Shiqi Laifu, a true friend. Laifu told me that these fruits go great with wine. Shiqi thought it was a waste. That's why it's better to drink more. A little later, the two of them were already drunk. Laifu asked to be called Dongfang in the future, but Shiqi still called him his brother Laifu and told him to call him Erha. The next morning, Laifu woke up and didn't realize where he'd even slept. Afterward, he saw a demon near him and was immediately frightened. He punched Shiqi right in the face, calling him a monster. Shiqi clutched his cheek, not understanding why Laifu had hit him. That's when the protagonist remembered his friend. Shiqi looked at unhappily Laifu. Laifu remembered his words about not being a dog, but then how would he explain this? It's even more similar now. He's clearly a husky. Shiqi started to claim that he was howling like a wolf. He will take Laifu to the mountains, and then he will see for himself. As soon as the kid showed the spiritual fruit, he immediately fell silent. Laifu threw the spiritual fruit and Shiqi caught it. Shiqi is clearly mistaken if they think he's a wolf. He's acting like a dog. The main character stretched, and he didn't even feel tired at all. It seems to be the power of cultivation. A glowing book appeared in front of him. It was the apartment's resident management manual Taixu, the first floor version. To make it easier for the protagonist to manage the residence, this guide has been specially prepared. Whoever prepared this manual expects the landlord to have good relations and communication between the residents. If he faces outbursts of anger, this guide will suggest the following solution. One should just hit out. He was a little perplexed by this guidance. Suddenly something from the book was instilled right into his body. Laifu even felt his body become more energized. It felt great. Afterward, the kid noticed that the pages in the book began to turn into pages by themselves. In order for Laifu to completely solve the problem, he needs to scrutinize this guide and utilize the abilities of the residents. He even recalled seeing the information about the apartments. The owner could use the residents' abilities. He wanted to see the apartment information, so by saying it out loud. But nothing happened. He tried to call up the system, the Taixu apartments, or even the information panel, but nothing came out. So why isn't the apartment information displayed? Does he really need to say open sesame? And it actually worked. Laifu thought it was some kind of madhouse. The system showed the occupants in the first floor. 101st room and Ha and Chi, male, wolf. The conditions for the apartment owner said to have a tenant management manual for the first floor version. Possess the status of an apartment owner. He has the right to summon the tenants with a key fob. And it is possible to accidentally get one of the tenants' ability. At the same time, the ability of the tenants will not be reduced. He gained an ability called Moonblade. It is the wolf's ability to worship the moon using spiritual energy. The user can channel the power of the sun and release the Moonblade. Laifu decided to put this ability to the test. He was indeed able to perform this technique. But at the same instant, she disappeared. Laifu was disappointed that this was it. He even felt that his spiritual energy was already depleted. So it was not the technique that was weak, but he did not have enough spiritual energy for the technique. That's why you have to practice well. There are 5 vacant rooms on the first floor, so we need to find a couple more tenants. And preferably they should be cultivators with strong skills. He opened the laptop. The protagonist simply cannot sit and wait for the tenants to come to him. He has to act on his own. Life found some information, and before that, they decided to have a little refreshment. He looked on the internet and found out that it was a place where we often had strange things happen. After that, he asked what thought about it Shi-Chi. Shi-Chi sniffed, and it seemed to him that it was quite ordinary. The protagonist suggested that they wait for now, as they might find something later. Xia told him that even if that happened, it would probably be a matter for the 10,000 Race Alliance to decide. Leaf wondered what kind of alliance this was. He had heard of it before, but the name was kind of creepy. Wolf revealed that it was a very powerful organization. In order for cultivators and ordinary people to live in harmony, the leaders of both sides signed a non-aggression agreement. Therefore, cultivators must not reveal their abilities to ordinary people. Laifu wondered if even demons obediently fulfill these terms of the contract. Of course, there are also renegades called abnormal, but it's not just demons. There are plenty of them in the human world as well. The Alliance of 10,000 Races has a law enforcement agency called the Alliance of Encounters. It specializes in fighting anomalies, and there are many wolves among them. Laifu started joking about that time Shi-Chi showing his form to scare him, and it came out that he had broken the rules. Shi-Chi started to explain that he couldn't help himself when he saw the Taixu apartments. It was an accident. He stroked Shi-Chi's head, saying that even if these people caught him, Laifu would put in a good word for him. After that, the kid already wanted to talk about the apartments. Shi-Chi proudly declared that was now Laifu, his brother. Brother's business and his business. Since they had eaten, they should get back to cultivation. After which he ran to pay the bill. Meanwhile, a girl who was calmly eating her food was accosted by 2 men who demanded that this hottie leave her wet chat, but she calmly told them no. The girl didn't even pay attention to them. Apparently, these 2 were not interesting to her. This made the man very angry. He even said it was disrespectful, but she only turned her attention to her food. The girl claimed he spoiled her soup. That tone was starting to piss him off even more. Laifu decided to intervene as well. Others, however, the man tried to reassure his friend by asking what he wanted to get from her. He wanted to touch the girl, telling her not to be afraid, for he would protect her. Laifu demanded that they let her go, but as it turned out, he didn't even need to get involved in this mess. This girl could calmly stand up for herself despite her rather fragile appearance. After she dealt with one man, she proceeded to deal with the second man by elbowing him. She stepped on the battered man, demanding that he behave more respectfully. Now Laifu saw that this girl was fierce. Hearing his words, she immediately turned towards him and even thought that he was in on it with those 2. The guy started to panic and tried to explain that he wasn't with them. But suddenly, the battered man started claiming that he had paid 1,000 yuan for them to find the girl. And then Laifu decided to make himself look like a hero who saved the beautiful girl. The main character started yelling that the 2 were lying. He didn't even think about deceiving her. The girl wondered if he thought she was stupid. Laifu kept claiming that he didn't hire these people. She immediately swung her foot at him, wishing this scum would die. Suddenly, they heard a shout that requested Sister Yue Liang not to do so. It was Shi-Chi who told her that everyone here was his own, so he asked her not to take offense. Besides, Brother Laifu wasn't even lying, for he really didn't have 1,000 yuan. After all, Shi-Chi had just paid for lunch. The protagonist asked him not to shout about it like that. Even the man's assailants called him a beggar. Laifu shouted for him to shut his mouth. The second man tried to leave the scene, but the girl saw him. She immediately threw her wands at him. The sticks hit his body, after which he fell to the ground. Shi-Chi and Laifu were shocked by her ingenuity. And Yue Lian is 23 years old, and she is a human being. A security officer and a member of the board of directors of Imperial Duty Company, a graduate of a metropolitan school, an aspiring cultivator. Imperial Duty Company is a member of the leading clan in the cultivator world, Safe Island. The clan promotes martial styles. And as for the safety of the island, it's the leading clan in the cultivator world, with all the disciples advancing martial styles. The head of the island is the most skillful cultivator who has a very strong spiritual energy body, and he is called invulnerable. But Yue Lian was not weak from birth. She was full of reluctance to kill. She strives for superiority in everything. Naturally, she wouldn't cultivate the standard defensive practices from her family's heritage. Later, This young mistress began traveling the world, raising bloody whirlwinds and rains, became a frightening moon witch to everyone. All day long she slays demons, and the whole town is in fear of her. Even he fell into her clutches once before. Those events even brought tears to his eyes. Fortunately, Shuqi is kind and honorable. He is also smarter than others, so he was released. And Laifu even thought she was a villain, so it was lucky they didn't get caught in the hot hand. Shuqi started to argue that he was not a weakling. The girl came up behind them and asked what they were chatting about. Shuqi immediately took her luggage and asked her sister why didn't she ask him to help. Yelian noticed that he didn't change at all. He really likes to get his hands dirty. The guy was walking behind the two of them and noticed that even though she seems fragile, she's actually violent. Wolf told her that the apartment he was currently living in was a heavenly place with extremely intense spiritual energy. He even assured that she would love the place. Laifu also noticed that the Erhu was very kind to her. This girl is definitely not an easy one, so you need to torture her in terms of money later on. Yulin replied that he hadn't really seen anything. How could he even compare his dwelling to heaven? She had a spiritual stone that could help her cultivate. Therefore, she decided to just take one look with one eye and leave as she was calm. This girl is clearly very knowledgeable, so you need to find her weaknesses to deal with her. He doesn't even know whether this portal can affect her. Either way, it's worth a shot. Laifu asked if he still remembered the living conditions. The wolf replied that one must carry the return and could return to at once Taixu. She didn't even expect this mansion to have a portal as well. The guy said the word return a couple times, but even after a minute, nothing happened. Laifu explained that his level was too low, so the pronunciation time would be a little longer. If he stays with this lady any longer, she'll obviously finish him off. And suddenly, a portal finally opened in front of them. Erha rejoiced. The main character told me that this is just one of the special benefits of the apartments for the residents. They just make things much more convenient. Erha decided to go first, and Laifu wanted to escort Mizan. Albeit reluctantly, she accepted his hand. Looks like the goddess of luck finally took notice of him, and the protagonist led Ms. Anne from the portal. Then he happily informed Shuqi that they had returned. The girl felt that there was no concentration of spiritual energy here, comparable to a safe island that had an inviolable defense, and also a huge reserve of spiritual energy. She lost her temper for a second. After that, she tried to pull herself together, for she had even seen the whole world. After which, the guys noticed crying Shuqi. He was crying because of his spiritual power. Laifu inquired what had happened. The wolf said that a few minutes of traveling had consumed a fifth of his spiritual energy. He had never wasted so much in his life. Yulin replied that it didn't matter how far away they were, but she wouldn't go back anymore. Shuqi recognized her rightness. In any case, the spiritual energy here doubles the speed of practice and yields fruits every day. Therefore, his spirit would recover very quickly. Laifu mentally asked this guy to watch his tongue. Actually, he should have been the one to tell. But looking at how hard this dog was trying, he decided to forgive him. She couldn't believe there were such great perks. Even if Sis had a spiritual treasure that could help practice, it still wouldn't compare to these bonuses. Shuqi wondered if he would cheat her. The boys exchanged glances as well, and the main character mentally praised his resident. Dongfan advised him not to rush into making a decision. She could start by staying in the Erhu's apartment for free. The girl agreed. After that, she too began to absorb spiritual energy. Yulin wondered why she hadn't heard of these apartments before. Dongfang said that they were inherited and had recently fallen into his hands. She agreed that the place is generally suitable to live here, so it is time to discuss the rent. If he lowered the rent, he might not be up to the status of this young mistress. So he decided to raise the price. Laifu said she should pay 100,000 a month, a yearly payment. And this price is exactly in yuan. The girl immediately wanted to call her daddy to ask him to buy the whole place back. It was too cheap a price. Seeing how this girl couldn't make a decision yet, the guy didn't understand why she was so greedy. He could raise the price, so he decided to propose another solution. But in the end, she agreed to that price. She knew he'd obviously realized what she'd been thinking. There's no turning back. Laifu thought he was a genius. Soon he could restore his family to its former glory. The boys shook hands in honor of the agreement. The kid then handed her a contract to sign as well. Yelin wondered what this space was even Taixu like. In fact, Laifu doesn't really understand it either. Grandpa didn't say anything about it, but it wasn't a big deal to her, so she decided to sign. Dongfang cheerfully welcomed her into the number of tenants. She could now officially move into the apartment. Yulian replied that would help her with her airha luggage. The kid said that he lived in the neighboring Zero apartment, so she could go to him in case of anything. In his room, he rejoiced at the income. After that, he decided to see what qualities Mistress had. The system asked him if he wanted the ability of a resident of the 102nd apartment. The guy confirmed his decision. From the system window, something had gotten back into him. There was the usual information about the owner and the number of floors with rooms. But there was a new tenant in the 102nd apartment, and Yuelian, a girl. He told the system to get to the bottom of it. He already knows that information. An ability called Mystery Detection was obtained by the owner. Allows you to cover the whole body or parts of it with spiritual energy, balancing attack and defense. If there is a lack of spiritual energy, priority is given to defending parts of the body. He felt kind of bad about this ability, since he didn't even know what detection did. The system told me it was detecting a mystery. Maybe he should just pretend he understood. He didn't get anything on that information, after which he recalled the words that when spiritual energy is lacking, vital organs are prioritized. This situation was starting to piss him off, because by all logic, he should have been protecting his head. The system then told me that you could only randomly protect one part of your body. He decided not to dwell on it. He'd have to check the level of protection first anyway. If he is not going to be tough as himself, then how can he travel? He decided to try and break through that defense. As it turned out, it really was a great defense. He really is invincible now, and when the spiritual energy fills up, he will be able to cover his entire body. With this attack-defense skill, one will not be afraid of fighting at close or long range. Except that the presentation is a bit of a letdown. Shuchi came running to him, who explained that there was trouble. Fortunately, the spiritual energy had run out, so he might not worry too much about defense. Wolf asked Brother Laifu what on earth he was doing. Dongfan replied that it was nothing and asked what was wrong. As it turned out, Sister Yuelian had escaped. He wondered where she might have run off to. His gold mine couldn't get away that easily. Shuchi explained that he and his sister went to buy things and then discovered something unusual, and Yuelian immediately went there. The news that his wallet Laifu had gone somewhere scared the hell out of him. The guy wondered how he could even leave it behind and not come running back. It's not really what he thinks it is. The girl said that the man is very strong, but she has no weapons, so she asked the wolf to come running for her sword. Dongfang immediately pulled Shuchi behind him, shouting that she was in danger. Why was he even standing here and wasting time talking? We need to hurry to find her. The wolf asked to wait. After all, he didn't even take his sister's sword. After a long run, Laifu tried to catch his breath as usual. He asked where one was supposed to go. Shuchi asked to leave the matter to him. Laifu didn't understand what he meant. The guy immediately lowered himself to the ground to smell her. Others, of course, took notice and started taking pictures. Shuchi pointed in the direction and also barked. Dongfang praised this good boy like a dog, after which the two of them saw Yuelian, who was standing in front of the unknown person. The protagonist was thinking that he must be a fool. He had to think of wearing a hooded coat in the heat of summer. Shuchi recognized him as a demonic cultivator. Of course, Dongfang didn't even know what kind of demonic cultivators these were. Shuchi replied that he was a ghost. Lei felt uncomfortable with this explanation. This really couldn't be true. Dongfang clearly didn't think so, for that hooded guy looks like an ordinary person. The man didn't even know if those two were insulting him or not. Yuelian replied that it was an ordinary person, so one should just be patient. The wolf learned that the guy was also of the demon race. He could change into human form with practice. Just now, Laifu realized that these ghosts were also cultivators. Papa Togo's all-wolf-like confirmed his hunch. Then he wasn't just going to let this person go. He even started using the soul absorption technique. This was something Shuchi definitely didn't expect. At the same time, Laifu offered a place for his brother to live. He doesn't even have any collateral. Laifu shouted happily that he was the landlord, and if he booked now, he would get a big discount on the rent. Yuelian shouted for him to shut his mouth, and this man only remained silent. Yulen summoned her blade. The blade that was wrapped in cloth behind the wolf's back immediately flew into her hand. The girl insisted that he speak. She wanted very much to know who had sent him. But of course he answered nothing and decided to join the fight. In an instant he disappeared from sight. Yuelian. Shuchi shouted that he was in her shadow. She immediately turned back and saw her shadow striving somewhere. He decided to land attack Laifu. The guy immediately got out of his shadow and afterward spat some purple stuff. The girl screamed at him to dodge it. On his defense was Shuchi, who decided to cover him with his arm. The stranger noticed that the girl had decided to attack him from behind as well. He jumped up to dodge her blow. Then he jumped all the way to the roof of the building. He just silently gave all three of these three a look. Yuelian called him a scumbag, after which she threw herself after him in pursuit. She clearly didn't want to give him a chance to escape. Laifu admitted that it was an incredible speed. He breathed a sigh of relief, talking about how scary it was. After which the kid wanted to thank the Erhu for saving him, but suddenly he noticed how that purple liquid was still coming right up to him. Suddenly the girl heard a scream. Shichi was very worried about brother Laifu. There was some kind of dark fog around Dongfan. It was as if he saw something that made his whole body tremble. After which the guy fainted. Fortunately, Shuchi was able to catch him in time. Without thinking long, she decided to let this man go and go back to those two. Dong body fans was shaking, whether from pain or cold. Shiki noticed the sister running over to them Gillen. He immediately inquired his brother was all right if Laifu. The girl realized that it was an invasion of ghostly energy. Because S-body Laifu was weak, he was pierced by coldness. She placed her hand on his head, indicating that they would get rid of that energy now. Laifu immediately shouted that his head hurt. It's like it's about to burst. It was said that the energy of the ghost barrier could be crushing. Yuelian only helped a little. But his soul was under spiritual attack. The rest will be up to him. But isn't that damage to the soul? In the novels, when people face situations like this, they die if they don't find healing seeds. Suddenly he fainted. Shichi informed his sister that Laifu was unconscious. Yuelian replied that he needed time, so it was best not to disturb him for now. On the third day, he kept twisting from side to side on the bed, talking about how his head hurt a lot. He already knows he can't save himself, so he asked to at least be given the opportunity to die without pain. A book appeared in front of him. After that, it was as if she had taken possession of his head. There were some incomprehensible words swirling around S-body Laifu. Even though he didn't know what it was, it felt good. It was as if he had begun to speak the language himself. A golden glow enveloped his entire body. After that, the glow disappeared. The protagonist opened his eyes and realized that he was able to heal. Not only was the headache gone, but he was also invigorated. He happily got out of bed and wanted to tell the others the news. But as soon as he opened the door, he heard terribly loud noises. Laifu covered his ears, not understanding what was going on here. The soundproofing was good, but even here I could hear everything. He came to the source of the sound and saw that the two men were just watching a movie. The guy immediately turned on the light. Yuelian and Shuchi didn't like the fact that someone interrupted their rest. Laifu asked if anyone could explain what's even going on here. Shuchi pointed at his sister. Yuelian raised her hand and said that everything would be explained. But before she did, she asked if Laifu wasn't supposed to be in a coma, and the protagonist offered to answer his question first. It was too spacious, so all she did was add a little detail. Also, the girl asked not to be thanked for it, but such arbitrariness did not please him. She had not even consulted him, who was the landlord. Yuelian replied that it was not necessary to settle, so she decided to give 1 million as compensation. Laifu immediately changed his attitude. Since they had changed everything, he wouldn't take payment. After all, they had already spent a lot. She even saved him yesterday, and he still couldn't thank her. She was tired of listening to all of this. It was actually Yuelian's fault that he was in such a dangerous situation. Therefore let him better go and buy himself something nutritious. Shuchi advised brother Laifu to humble himself, or else sister would get angry. Laifu agreed to spend the money on food. Next time she wouldn't let him man up, you could tell by her serious attitude. Afterward, the girl remembered that he never answered her question. How he had gotten better at all. He doesn't really know it himself. Anyway, at least he got some sleep. His body seems to have overcome the ailment on its own. Of course, those two didn't believe his words. They seemed to be dealing with a real talent. The attacks of ghost cultivators mainly contain energy, yin and cold. They have the ability to deal damage to the soul. And since he was able to recover so quickly, he must be really special. He really liked the words about him being special. Laifu really wanted that guy to live here, because then he could increase his own strength even more. At this rate, he'll soon be the new Iron Man. He'll be rich and very famous as well as capable. He enthusiastically stated that some dangerous deviation from the norm should not be left unreviewed. Yuelian suggested that he should save his strength. Shuchi replied that his brother seemed a bit arrogant. Laifu didn't answer anything to that, but in his heart he was saddened. And the protagonist recognized that these two are right, so he'd better work from home. He felt sad that he had neither money nor ability. It was a pity that he had sunk to such a low level. Yuelian noticed his condition and asked if she was being too straightforward. Shuchi thought that she was trying to do the best after all. She didn't really like this situation, so she stopped Laifu. She felt that he would soon reach the spiritual source realm, so she would soon take him with her. He was immediately cheered up by this news. The boy asked if it was telling the truth. A smile appeared on her face, and she stated that it was true. He even got a little embarrassed. He ran to his room and said you'd expect good news. Laifu thought that this girl was kind and beautiful. Besides, her background is good. But he needs to be able to keep his temper. Still, she seems to be a saint. A week later, the system congratulated the homeowner on his successful breakthrough. He was now at the initial stage of the spirit source realm. Laifu thought that he was the truest genius. He had now become a cultivator as well. Now he'll see who else is a liability. Yulian was dissatisfied that Shiqi hadn't come out yet. If he didn't come out, she would kick the door. The guy had already run up to her, talking about how he was already here. There they spotted a seated Laifu. The main character wished them a good morning. He also asked if they were going out. Yulian had said that they would wait until she reached the spiritual source realm, right? It was only then that she felt something, namely his energy. She couldn't believe that he had already reached the spirit source realm. How was it even possible to break through so quickly? Shiqi thought that brother was really good. He seems to be going against fate. The last time he saw him, the spiritual energy in his body Laifu was like a pea, and it had only been half a month. The protagonist replied that he was just lucky, and yet she is a universally recognized genius. But it took her 3 months to break through to the realm of the spiritual source. This guy only had half a month. Laifu didn't understand how it happened either. He had just practiced last night and was able to break through. Wasn't it because they were secretly supplying him with inner strength? Yilian held up her hands, saying that he was making good progress, so he should keep it up. The guy replied that he would try his best to do so. He immersed himself in his thoughts, which took a few more days. As it was, he would have made it through 3 more days. And now they could hit the road. The two of them were carrying purchases Yuelian. Laifu asked if they spend all their time like this. Shiqi inquired, wondering what he was thinking before that. He also thanked that at least he wasn't alone this time. Laifu asked what about the anomaly search. Yulin replied that they were just looking for them. Did Dongfeng think she was just walking around? For his information, anomalies lurk in crowds. Now he's got it all figured out. So he should just relax and not pretend that they were looking for these anomalies. The girl wished him luck. But first, they need to calm down. Besides, Laifu has to watch his words, or someone might take the opportunity to attack after hearing their conversations. The protagonist replied, explaining it well. Another 2 hours passed. Yuelian offered to eat. The guys were too exhausted. Seeing them all munching away nicely, the girl wondered if they had been able to spot anything. She also asked if would choke on it Shiqi. The man replied that of course not. Everyone in his family eats like that. Then she turned her attention to Laifu. He's smart, and he's not an arrogant rich guy. He's different from the others. His talent and actions make her doubtful. He noticed his gaze, Yuelian on himself, and asked why she wasn't eating. She looked away embarrassed, talking about being on a diet, so let them eat on their own. Suddenly, she noticed something. Luck seemed to be on her side today. The girl told these two to eat, and she'd be back soon. Laifu told his brother to stop eating and also offered to follow her. He asked the manager to keep an eye on things, and they would be back soon. She followed the man who went around the corner. He then walked over to the food and drink vending machines. As soon as she got a little closer, the man immediately turned around, because he sensed her presence. Julian felt that his energy was strange and sinister. She doesn't know what these cultivation techniques are, but it seems like he won't be easy to deal with. And if they start fighting now, there will be no casualties. The man knew this girl had come for him, so he offered a gesture to go elsewhere. Yulian followed him straight into the elevator. Laifu yelled for her to stop. These two also sensed something strange, namely that man's ominous aura. It even looked too as if he'd crawled out of his grave. Laif. Yulian ordered to Shiqi take the protagonist home. Laifu kept saying it was dangerous for her to be alone with him. The girl just smiled and said not to worry. She had a lot of confidence. Whereupon the elevator closed. Shiqi understands his feeling, but there is some truth in his sister's words. Laifu only brushed it off. He thought it was delusional. If something happened to, how could they be called men then? Yuelian. He knows that Shiqi is too dumb to properly assess the situation. But if something happens to, the girl's father won't forgive him. Yuelian. In front of his eyes it was as if his father appeared. Yuelian, who was boiling the wolf alive, had. Without a moment's hesitation, they rushed in pursuit. When the guys got off the elevator, they saw that the two men were gone. After which, Shiqi smelled the scent, and showed the direction they were in. Laifu stopped the cab right in front of the crosswalk. The cab driver was not happy that the two men had stopped him so suddenly, but a smile immediately appeared on his face when the money was thrown to him. They gave him 100,000 and asked him to go faster to the east. The car immediately sped up and the driver said to hold on tight. Chang'an, North Estate. Lee called back to the Erzu saying that he needed a tow truck because there was a problem, but he couldn't hear his interlocutor very well. The driver said he had a problem, so the Erzia should hurry up. Meanwhile, Yue Lian followed after the man, and they came straight as to the manor. The man told Mrs. An to pass. Master is waiting for her. These people knew her identity. They still dared to forcefully bring her here. After all, Yue Lian was very curious to know who his master was, and why were they looking for her. An elderly man came out there and said that by the arrival of Miss An he was honored. He also apologized for his inhospitable act. Yue Lian, after which he asked the lady to proceed inside the building. There aren't many people with the surname A.N.H., so she assumed that this person knew about her father and position. She had to go inside to find out what they needed. Laifu was riding on the back of Shichi, who had reincarnated into a wolf. He mentally asked for Yue Lian to hold on. They would come to her soon. She was going to be escorted to the second floor. The stairs were guarded by two men in black suits and glasses. The girl noticed that those people in black were at the beginning stage of the spiritual source realm, and whoever brought her in the first place is on the same level as herself. The man led her to a room where the same elderly man was sitting with his guards. He repeated again that he was honored to see the lady in his humble home. Then he invited her to sit down. What was not hidden was the fact that two more representatives of the supreme-grade spiritual source realm had appeared, from AESK's Yue Lian. She noticed the man who was outside closing the door after she arrived. The girl asked who they were and why they needed her. In the cultivator's world, everyone knows about Ms. An. Therefore, he was glad that she had come to Chang'an. The man suggested that she stay here for a while. She wondered who this old man was. Besides, she couldn't even determine his strength from his energy. Yue Lian sat down on the sofa and asked what they would do if she didn't accept their invitation. Strike replied that he was just on a mission, so it was best not to put him in a predicament. Of course, it's the old man who is intentionally hiding his power. But the sinister energy suggests that their intentions are not good at all. She realized that her father was being stalked again. Her father may have many friends, but he has even more enemies. They all want to take her hostage so that her father can dance to their tune, and it really pissed her off. Why couldn't these people just leave her alone? He asked the mistress to stay with them for a few days. Of course, if she needed anything, she could feel free to talk about it. Suddenly, they all noticed an extraneous noise. The old man ordered to see what was going on immediately. He also asked the lady not to worry, because these people will figure it out. She realized that these two fools were really determined to save her. Did the old man really think she had agreed to accept his invitation? And why didn't he get her opinion in any way? At the last second, he managed to dodge that blow, after which he cast a demon suppression talisman. She immediately wanted to destroy this talisman, but a hand appeared behind her, wanting to grab her. Of course, the girl was able to calmly dodge that as well, after which she landed on the floor in front of her new opponent. It was now noticeable that he was practicing demonic cultivation. She was determined to get rid of those nasty bastards. Shichi recognized that it was well said. Since Sister was scolding them so much, she would be able to figure it out. He welcomed the audience to the Express Cultivation Knowledge course from Shichi. In the cultivation world, humans, demons, spirits, ghosts, and other races are in alliance. But each evolves in its own way. However, there are always those who are looking for easy ways, so they develop other cultivation techniques. In order to increase their level, they kill other races and even their own kin. Obviously, these two in front of Yue Lian are exactly the same kind of scum. And this is a spirit control whip. As the name suggests, this is a strip artifact that is used to control spirits. By belittling spirits, people cause them to emit anger and draw anger into themselves, and then transformed into an unconscious evil spirit that is used to attack the enemy. But that uncle with the stretched face is no better. He cultivates a special practice that is able to absorb spirits into one's body and thus receive amplification. Even though Sister said she could handle it herself, it wouldn't work that way. He wanted to join the fight too. Shichi used his technique called Moonblade. There were two people in front of Laifu. He didn't even know what he should do now. Yue Lian said that he was already well practiced, but Shichi decided to proceed alone. How so? The guards realized that this guy is just like themselves, that is, at the initial stage of the spirit source realm. But he was acting too arrogant. It was unclear where he got such confidence from. There was definitely some sort of trick here. He asked brother to Leif hang in there. He would deal with these people and then help there too. But the fact that he was distracted could have meant a lot to him. Fortunately, he had time to react. The man said that if they continued to stand, he would give them to the elder. They decided to attack together. Once the protagonist stepped onto the path of cultivation he no longer belonged to this world. But he would try to do something since he had entered the first step of the cultivation path. Laifu immediately attacked them. The guard punched him in the stomach. He wasn't going to take the blows so easily either. So he counterattacked. He kept exchanging blows with them. This guy overestimated himself. He shouldn't have taunted those two. He was advised not to move, because at least then his corpse would look decent. Shichi was correct in what he said. Ordinary people only rely on brute force rather than their skills. He told the boys he'd warmed up. Now the real fight would begin. Energy began to gather around the guard's fist, so he decided to end this whole fight with one punch. This only encouraged even more Laifu. Their fists made contact and then he engaged, thunder rolling. The man's hand was in a terrible state. He clearly hadn't expected such strength from someone on the same level as themselves. Taking advantage of the man's confusion, Laifu attacked him with his foot. He was shocked by his partner's condition. The man didn't understand what was wrong with him, and how he could even do this. This fool hasn't even realized anything yet. But if words didn't work, then why feel sorry for them? He tried to provoke the man by calling him a chicken. Laifu already understood the whole system of their attacks. Time to hurry up, since he didn't have much time to spare. He was shaking with anger, because this guy was definitely using some sneaky techniques. So he decided to show him his technique. Laifu couldn't believe it. Could it be that he had some kind of ability too? This technique involved throwing objects at your opponent. The juice packet hit his cheek. He was shaking this bag and there was irritation on his face. At the same time, the man started to run away. He was screaming for help. At the same time, Laifu used a technique called Moonblade. This reception was so powerful that it caused the man's legs to hurt. He fell to the floor and started screaming in pain. Even Laifu didn't know he could do that. Looks like he went overboard. It seemed to be a skill best used with caution. Meanwhile, Shichi was also trying to deal with his opponents, who immediately recoiled as soon as he started using his power, and he heard about the name of his own reception. Sounds like his brother was very lucky. The guy told me that he hadn't fully figured it out yet. In his mind, he was thinking that he was finished. Suddenly, he noticed how Shichi wanted to attack therefore, shouting for the guy to be careful. But it was too late, for he was thrown right back into the wall. The battered man immediately pounced on him. He shouldn't have turned his back on his opponent. Soon Laif turned attention to Shichi. He has no other choice. We're gonna have to hit back. Because of this attack, there was like an explosion that threw the guys off each other. The man fell to the floor, and Laifu somehow managed to keep his balance. His arm was broken too, and his fingers were bent. Even though he was glad that he was able to win, he still didn't understand why he was even using this power. There was a man behind him as well, preparing to attack. There was a concentrated spiritual energy in his hand that wanted that lousy guy dead. Fortunately, Shichi had time to transform into a wolf and used his skill on this man. He chopped the man in two. Laifu noticed that this wolf was running right at him, but he ran past and pounced red-eyed on another man. Of course, this was the first time had ever seen someone gnaw on a human before his own eyes, Laifu. He fell to the floor, and his body began to shake. Shichi was as if he was out of his mind. The protagonist shouted his name and asked to listen as soon as he saw the wolf's gaze fall on him. It was like he was starting to come to his senses. After that, Shichi returned to his human form, completely naked. Seeing this condition, he immediately ran up to his friend, asking how he was feeling. He picked him up and begged him to wake up. There were even tears in his eyes. Laifu thought it was all his fault. He too decided to double the compensation only if he woke up. Suddenly, told him that he wasn't that easy to kill, so there was no need to worry. But it was good that he woke up. Shichi took the clothes in the battered men to avoid running around naked. And Laifu noticed that the self-training had paid off. He said that a lot of techniques are passed down in the An family from generation to generation. So Laifu shouldn't even think about being cooler than his sister now. As soon as Laif thought about it, he realized that he was S-level, as far from moon. Yue Lian. The old man asked Madam why the torture. Hey, the best thing is to surrender in a good way. But from the old man's head floated a spiritual artifact that was covered with sinister power. Yulian's clothes were cut open, and beside the man, he stood by the two puppets. It's really hard for her to stand up to these people. She noticed she was being attacked by these puppets. The girl easily cleaved the enemies with a powerful swing of her sword, leaving a dazzling golden trail behind her. In just an instant, the puppets scattered. It seemed like victory was in her pocket, however. The puppets were back in formation. They recovered quickly. S-word Yue Lian had not even dealt them any blow. Seeing this whole situation, she even admitted that this creature is very hard to defeat. And she also realizes that they don't want her dead. The old man smiled slyly, saying that he had no reason to antagonize the An family. Therefore, naturally, he would not kill her. She was annoyed, for she didn't understand why she was being kept here then. This volume infuriated the old man even more. He asked not to be forced to use force. With a single move, he made the puppets attack her again. With a wave of her hand, she dissected these puppets many times, causing the slash marks on their bodies to remain. At the same time, another opponent attacked her. She noticed his intention and was able to easily jump away from his hand. The old man seemed tired of fighting her, so he decided to join the fight and end it all. He put a sinister energy on her. In this situation, it would be difficult for her to dodge this lunge, but suddenly, a new combatant enters the end stage. This was the same person that Yue Lian had followed earlier in the alley. He was able to dispel that demonic art. He immediately attacked the old man, screaming about taking his life. The hooded man delivers her swift blow right where the old man was standing, but the man managed to jump back from the trajectory of the blow. At the same time, Yue Liang ran behind her and asked her to hold this old man back until she dealt with these puppets. He ran past the puppets. After that, it was as if the guy was even more determined to kill this old man. Shuqi and Laifu hurried to the second floor to join the battle. The guys immediately saw Yue Lian fighting with two puppets and hitchhiking to dodge another person. Then their attention was drawn to the same stranger they had seen last time. And he also fought against the old man. Shuqi asked to Laifu take care of himself while he helped Sister Yue Lian. After saying that, he headed straight to the center of the battle. Shuqi immediately asked the girl if she was all right. At the same time, Yulian didn't understand why these two were so naughty. After all, she had told them to stay there, and not to follow her. The wolf was a little disgusted to hear all these reproaches in the form. They were just worried about her. Meanwhile, Yue Lian swung his foot to strike directly at the man's chin. After that, she asked that the two men go back. But it was also clear to a fool that no one would ever think of going back home and when such an event was happening here. Yue Lian knew this as well. Fang Laifu, standing near the door, noticed Sister Yue Lian and Shuqi fighting valiantly against their enemies. He also noticed that that cultivator was an uninvited guest. But Life was wondering how on earth he had gotten here, and why he was fighting against that old man. The old man declared that he had spared this boy's miserable life, but he decided to come again. Does he really want to become one of the old man's slaves too? The boy, as if with more anger, told Zhu Gui that this day would be his last, and he had come here to avenge his kin. Zhu Gui thought that he was overconfident, therefore he would now pay for this prank of his. At the same time, Yue Lian used telekinesis to control her sword. Of course, she noticed the chance in front of her eyes. With this, she could finally end this whole battle. Yue Lian pointed her sword directly at the spiritual talisman. The guy noticed it too, so he immediately appeared in front of the ball to prevent her from dissecting that talisman. He was willing to go so far that he even let the sword impale himself. While Yue Lian was confused by what had just happened, the man didn't even think of missing this opportunity. She had no choice but to respond to this blow with her own fist. After their fists made contact, Yue Lian activated a technique called Kara. The man cried out in pain, for his fingers were twisted. Unfortunately, she forgot to warn that it is in close combat that she is excellent. But this secret is known only to the dead. It was as if a spiritual energy began to boil around her, covering her entire body. The puppets who were fighting Shuqi felt this terrifying power. It made them stop. Laifu felt this power as well. Is his sister really that strong? At the same time, Yue Lian non-stop threw many punches at him, which left behind a golden trail. It was expected that she would deal with this man very quickly. All of this, of course, was seen by Zhu Gui, whose body was already shaking with fear. She turned to the old man with a smirk, indicating that it was his turn. Zhu Gui recognized that this was a really good move. Of course, he knew that he was going to die, so he wanted to see if her armor could withstand the soul strike. Since it's a soul strike, the truth is, Laifu also relies on this cultivation method. He even wondered if he would be able to withstand this blow. The old man noticed the guy who was standing behind her, and he seemed pretty important to him. So he decided to scare him first, and then take advantage of the commotion to escape. He engaged the soul absorption energy, and Yue Lian immediately put out her hands, preparing to block this strike. But what she didn't expect at all was that this attack would pass her by and be aimed directly at Laifa. Shuqi, of course, also noticed that the punch was aimed specifically at the protagonist. Laifu thought about whether or not he could withstand this blow, but that didn't mean he had to take action right away. He wasn't prepared for this at all.